Hi everyone, I'm Mia and my teammates are Christian, Diana, Jasmine, Joaquin, and Josephina. We are a research team from class CMNS 362 that we took together last summer. Our research studies about the relationship between the hypersexualized stereotyping of Asian women and the violence they receive in real life, especially in the gender nature of anti-Asian hate crimes within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The othering of East and Southeast Asians has been perpetuated throughout most of history, creating stereotypes that often depict Asians as mysterious Orientals to juxtapose the self-perceived superiority of the West. These stereotypes are damaging, and with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, East and Southeast Asians in North America have experienced a rise in hate crimes. Our research surrounds the gender nature of Asian hate crimes and discusses how these stereotypes have led to harassment that often target women for their apparent hypersexuality. Naming the Atlanta spa shootings happened in March 2021 that killed 6 Asian women out of 8 victims. Next slide. And to investigate this matter, we propose 2 main research questions. How has the online hypersexualization of Asian women affected the 2021 Atlanta spa shootings? And how has the online stereotyping and objectifications of Asian women stimulated the rise of hate crimes in Vancouver during COVID-19? Next slide. And some of our sub-questions are, for content analysis, we'll look into how Asian women are sexualized and objectified on TikTok, and how has the media framed the Atlanta spa shootings. And for our focus group interview, we ask how do East and Southeast Asian women and women experience microaggressions and hate crimes differently in everyday life in Vancouver, and how have East and Southeast Asian women reacted to the 2021 Atlanta spa shootings. Next, Joaquin.
Thank you, Mia. So to answer our sub-questions, we facilitated a research design that composed of quantitative and qualitative methods. Firstly, with the news content analysis and the TikTok micro video content analysis. Both of these are there to support the focus group interviews that we conducted as well. Starting with the news content analysis, we had 30 random selected articles, as well as 2 articles and 1 video selected based on researcher insight. This was in order to measure the salience of keywords within Vivo to uncover framing. Next off, we had our focus group interviews, which consisted of 3 groups of 4 sampled at convenience. 1 group consisted of a mix with male and female, 1 was a full male group, and 1 was a full female group. Our criteria for our participants consisted of adult Asian Canadians living in Vancouver. In order to analyze what our findings in our interviews, we conducted inductive coding on NVivo. And lastly, with our TikTok micro video content analysis, we used 116 sample micro videos. There are 2 objective indexes, which are the number of likes within a time frame and the characters involved. There were 4 coding categories used as indicators of sexualization and objectification. So I will now pass this on to Josephina, who will explain some of the main findings.
For the content analysis of TikTok videos, we adopted the objectification theory as the theoretical framework for coding, and we coded for body exposure by noting whether the character had a fully or partially exposed body part and close-up shots on isolated body parts. Then we identified sexualized dancing as the movement meant to imply sexual invitation. Thirdly, we categorized videos with the presence of provocative dress, such as Japanese schoolgirl's uniform and maid costume. Lastly, we noticed the reproduction of historical stereotype of Asian woman submissiveness, such as dressing, acting, and talking like a child, needing protection or rescue, and being helpless and innocent. The result shows that submissiveness is still the most typical and popular portrayal of the woman characters appearing under the Asian hashtags, especially for the 7% of the videos are presented by decent Asian women who self-objectify by putting themselves in a submissive role. Also, for the body exposure category, over 64% of the videos are produced by unidentifiable characters. They involve close-up shots on the body parts or shots of the full body without showing the face. Thus, most of the TikTok producers objectify Asian women by showing their submissiveness, innocence, and vulnerability. Besides, the close-up shot of body parts objectify Asian women by alienating their body parts and presenting them as merely a collection of body parts. I will now pass on to Chris.
So for our second content analyses, we looked at 30 news articles through NVivo to do a discourse analysis on the agenda setting. The first thing we found was that the news media had a really high salience on the terms sexual addiction and bad day, which generally meant that they focused on the shooter and his background and his motivation. To contrast that, we also found that the news articles had a very low salience on the terms intersectionality, misogyny, victim background, and hypersexuality, which generally meant that the focus on the shooters drowned out the focus on the contextualized experience of the victims. And now we'll be going on to the focus group interviews, and Diana will be going over that part.
During the focus group interviews, we discovered some key commonalities. Participants had mixed responses regarding Asian representation in traditional media. However, they overwhelmingly believe that the media misrepresented the Asian community in the wake of the Atlanta spa shootings. Furthermore, participants addressed a wide variety of factors that influence microaggressions that they've experienced before, such as ignorance, a lack of education, and poor representation in the media. While we were interviewing the male group, we discovered that they were more likely to have mutual responses regarding microaggressions and to refer to the experiences of others as they lack their own. In contrast, while interviewing the female group, we discovered that they were more likely to express a greater concern for their own safety and the safety of their family members in the wake of the Atlanta spa shootings, and were also more likely to take safety precautions in the public. While interviewing the mixed group, we discovered that they were more likely to discuss the fact that Asian women are the easiest targets regarding microaggressions due to their vulnerable perception from the media. And to compare our findings, I will now pass it on to Jasmine.
From our findings from the content analysis, we found that from the TikTok videos, that the video producers, including both Asian and non-Asian women, objectify and sexualize Asian women by showing their submissive role, wearing provocative dress, and alienating their body parts from the whole. And from the news articles, we found that the news media focused more on the shooter having a bad day compared to describing the gendered microaggressions that Asian women face on a day-to-day basis. And from the focus group interviews, we found that gender identity was a major factor when it came to the participants discussing their perceptions of personal safety. And for geographical location and their upbringing was another important factor in influencing how the participants perceive microaggressions and hate crimes. And lastly, the lack of education of Asian culture and the misrepresentation of Asian women were the key factors that participants believed that mainly influenced microaggressions against Asian women. Now I'm going to be passing it on to Joaquin regarding the conclusion of our research questions.
Thank you, Jasmine. So to conclude all our findings, specifically looking at research question 1, we can conclude that news media companies are unwilling to focus on the intersectionality due to agenda setting, while the hypersexualization of Asian women on TikTok contribute to dismissing the Asian victims due to the exotic and submissive stereotype. To conclude research question 2, the apparent submissiveness and vulnerability of Asian women as stereotyped by Western media have gendered the ways in which Asian women experience microaggressions and harassment in the wake of COVID-19. So lastly, for our suggestions and recommendations, I will pass this on to Christian.
Awesome, thanks, Joaquin. Okay, so lastly, we just want to go over some suggestions and recommendations for future scholars who are interested in this topic. First, we just want to suggest that they look into more representation of Asian women on other social media platforms. Second, we recommend that they observe an alternative perspective of anti-Asian sentiment through the scope of another racial demographic. And for when they do focus group interviews, we suggest that they interview participants that reside in different cities or have different upbringings to further explore the influence of geographical location on perceptions of racism and microaggressions. And last, we suggest that they also use a more objective instrument to evaluate microvideos regarding sexualization and objectification for future content analysis. And that concludes our presentation. Thanks so much.